In this video, we're going to write a beginner-friendly checkpoint system that works in any game. I'll show you how to write it in a way that you can reuse it across other projects, and we'll do it in just a few minutes. There's no advanced coding required, so it's ideal for any beginner. Let's get started and level up your game development skills. So there's many ways you can write a checkpoint system, but this is how I do it. I start by adding the checkpoints, and then I put a number on each one of them. Now this is just to make the logic a little bit easier later. Also, notice how one of my checkpoints is a spawn location and the rest are parts. This also helps make the logic a little bit easier to write. Because we're able to use the default ROBLOX functionality the first time that a player is spawned, then we override it only when they're being respawned later. For us to be able to test this, we're going to change the base plate into essentially a big kill brick. So let's change the base plate to a red neon colour and add a script. The script is really straightforward. We get the parent part, and we get whatever touches it. In this case, it's going to be our humanoid. And then if we don't get a humanoid, we return and we do nothing else with the script. But if we do get a humanoid, then we set the health to 0. Now we need to create a checkpoint manager module, which we add to the server script service. In here, we want to do a few things. Firstly, we need to add the touched event to all the checkpoints when the module is first called. We also want the ability to get a checkpoint and set a checkpoint. We also want the ability to move our player to a checkpoint for when they're respawned. We're going to create a start method, and in here we're going to add a touched event to all our checkpoints. Now this start method is going to be called every time a player is added to the server, and it's going to accept a default checkpoint. To connect to the touched event for each one of our spawn points, we're going to use the collection service. I'll show you how to do this here, but if you want to know more about the collection service, I've got a video covering it in more depth. Check out the link in the description below. At the top of our script, we get the collection service. Then we go to the View, Tag Editor. Then we click New and create a new tag. We're going to call it Checkpoint. Then we want to come over to the Explorer and select all the parts, and then select the checkbox. So now when we go back to our script, we can use the collection service and call get tagged. Now this will loop through every single part that has the tag which matches the name checkpoint. We then use that part and connect to the touched event. So I've added a method to handle the touched event. Now you could add it here, but I think it's more readable by separating out the functionality. In here I get the part that touched our checkpoint and try to get the player from the character. If it is a player, I then want to update the checkpoint that the player has reached. So I create a set checkpoint function and accept the player and the checkpoint. To track which checkpoint the player has reached, I need to create a player checkpoint table, and this is going to track how the player has progressed. So the first thing I need to do in set checkpoint is get the current checkpoint. So I create a local function because this doesn't need to be exposed outside of the module script. This function gets the value that's associated with the player that's been passed into it, and if that value is nil, it returns a default checkpoint. Then we use the name of the checkpoint that's been returned and compare the past checkpoint with the current checkpoint, and we do this by converting them to a number. So we can see if the player has progressed any further, and if they have, then we use the latest checkpoint. Then the last thing we do in this module is provide the ability to move the player to the checkpoint that they've progressed to. We get the current checkpoint. Now remember, this can be the default checkpoint that was passed in at the start, or any other checkpoint that we have at this time. We then get the humanoid root part and set its C frame to the C frame of the current checkpoint and move the player up a little bit so they don't get stuck. And that's our module done. All we need to do now is call it. So we create another script that's going to connect to the player added event, and we require our checkpoint manager module. We then call start, passing in the default spawn location. The first time that this is called, it's going to add a touched event to each one of our checkpoint parts. But any other time that it's called, it's not going to do anything, it's just going to return. We then move the player to the set checkpoint when they spawn. So the first time that they spawn, we'll be using the default checkpoint that was provided, and after that it'll be depending on how far they've got. Let's test it to see if it works. So we start on our spawn location, we jump onto the first platform, and we run off and we die. So we should be respawned onto the first platform again. That one's worked as we expect it to, so we jump onto 2, then platform 3, and now when we run back to 2 and die, we should be respawned back onto platform 3, because that's the furthest point that we made it forward. So now I try to run back to the spawn platform, kill myself, and I should go back to 3 like I have done. And there we are, we've finished the course. The spawn platforms work. And that's it for now. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'm Tony from Hump Gaming, and I'll see you in the next one.